Hello and welcome to Student Theater Spotlight, a show about how student theater is made and the people who make it. Each week, we're going to focus on a particular theater community, showcasing an individual who makes significant contributions to the performing arts scene in that community. The goal of the podcast is to reach out to other student theater groups and learn about what makes their productions unique. We believe that there's no single right way to make theater, and we're looking forward to learning from our contemporaries. I'm your host. My name is Charlotte Perkins. I'm a student at the University of St. Andrews, and I've been a performer, producer, and musical director during my time at the university. This week, we are delighted to welcome to the podcast Oli Savage. He's the former manager of the Barron Theatre in St. Andrews and the current artistic director of the Greenhouse Theatre. Welcome, Oli. Thanks for
Very
being
excited
here.
to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So we'll start off with the traditional first question, which is, what is your favorite piece of theater that you've ever been involved with in any way?
I think this is a really tough question, and I hope you'll forgive me for going off on one a little bit in answering it. But
by all means.
Yeah. So I'm a recent graduate, and I've just started kind of working on the Greenhouse a bit more and kind of building up the work for the Greenhouse Theatre. And what I've been noticing a lot, especially with the pandemic, is I'm spending a lot of time doing a lot of the admin work and a lot of the kind of the funding work and the business management work, and not getting to do so much of the creative work at the moment. So recently I found myself thinking about the first significant show that I ever directed was a production of Romeo and Juliet. And I've been thinking about it a lot just because it was a really exciting time for me. It was my first ever foray into doing something a bit different. It was a piece of kind of immersive promenade theatre. It was kind of, very queer, and just really exciting thematically and like formally in terms of the art. So I've just been finding myself thinking about that a lot because it was a time in my life when I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what any of the like business side of theatre and running a theatre and running a theatre company meant. And it just allowed me to be really expressive. And to kind of continue on that thought process a bit, what I loved about it the most, I'm someone who's always worked quite deeply in like activist theatre and theatre that kind of tackles what I think are quite important issues. So that piece was kind of about exploring performance of gender and sexuality, and how, like, even though people try to be really flexible in understanding gender and sexuality from another person's perspective, it's often very difficult, and people are often not quite as liberal as they maybe want to think they are, basically, which was, that was really exciting. And then, as well as that, what was really exciting about it for me was spatially, it was just really different, and that's something that I enjoy working on. So the big thing for me was, the premise of this show was the audience entered this kind of nightclub space, or this space that was kind of delineated into different areas, but it was more like a warehouse in the sense that there was one divider down through the middle of the room that was shut at the beginning, separating kind of Montagues and Capulets, and just after the ball scene, so just after, oh God, is that the end of Act 1 or Act 2? Early on is the point. That divider gets brought back, and essentially the audience are then free to roam, and there are lots of scenes happening in this space, at once. Yeah. And so basically it's up to the audience to kind of pick and choose what they go and see. And that was just really exciting for me because I love the idea of like how you can use a space and a performance space to create a message, and to also build on the narrative that you're kind of trying to convey. So yeah, I guess the reason that I talk about that so deeply is it's something that I'm really excited. I've been thinking about more recently, and it's something that I'm hopefully going to be working on with a new show that I'm starting to put together for hopefully March this year, that does the same thing but in an outdoor setting using GPS tracking technology to track mobile phones in a exciting mobile phones in a performance space, and hopefully the idea is that audience members can decide the narrative that they interact with and the way that they interact with that narrative based on where they are in this space, but they don't necessarily know that they are choosing. So yeah, very long answer to that very short question, but it would be Romeo and Juliet, just because it's been something that I've been thinking about a lot recently.
So you obviously are working in a professional context right now, but I wonder if we could sort of link that with your student time. What makes the creation of student theater different, besides hopefully getting paid in a professional setting?
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed. Yeah, I think that's a really, really great question. And I think there is a really direct answer. To me, student theatre is amazingly creative. Um, Obviously professional theatre is a very creative art form, but I think it's completely different. It's creative in a very different way. There's that famous saying that I promised myself that I'd look up and then I didn't, and I can't remember what it is, but it's something along the lines of necessity breeds invention.
Sure.
What's really fantastic about student theatre is our resources are so limited. And as someone who spent 4 years making theatre in St Andrews, that has really shaped the way that I make theatre today. My work with the Greenhouse Theatre is the UK's first zero waste theatre, and we work in a venue that's built completely from found and recycled materials. All the set, props, costume, even the marketing that we use it's either we either don't use any materials, or if we do, everything is secondhand, has had a life before. The reason that I can do that is because I've been doing that for 4 years. This is not new. It's what we've basically done is we've looked at the attitude that we've had to take, and we've basically said, how can we brand this? How can we sell this in a way that's relevant? Don't get me wrong, the environment is incredibly important to me and to everyone that I'm working with. I think it's just really interesting to think, actually, we've been doing this, for a very long time. So to kind of tie it up, to sum it up, the key difference, I think, between student theatre and professional makers and professional theatre is that sense of necessity creates sometimes a lot of really terrible stuff. Let's not be wrong. But it also creates a sense of experimentation and a sense of necessity and a sense of like eagerness to make something out of something that isn't. In professional theatre, when you go to the West End, you get what you pay for. If there's supposed to be a clock on stage, there'll be a giant 30-foot high Big Ben replica. There'll be these huge flies and these huge sets. As a creative, that's not interesting to me. I'm not interested in those really like traditional proscenium arch setups. I'm not interested in things that are what they are. I'm interested in how we can make do and experiment with ideas and with emotions that audiences are familiar with, and then use that and harness that to kind of communicate with them and build a better connection. So yeah, and I also would just add, I think from the very brief interactions I've had with kind of other young professional theatre makers at the moment, I think that's a trend that has been happening, and I think it is continuing to happen and is picking up steam a lot in the professional theatre world. This idea of kind of expressionism, minimalism, and using that to kind of shape creativity and shape a connection. And it also ties into obviously a move towards a more sustainable theatre industry as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe having worked in that way makes someone like you and a company like the Greenhouse particularly prepared for a situation like this with so many limits.
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly the point. And when we were talking to press last year, the Greenhouse had to be cancelled in 2020 because of the pandemic. But when we were talking to press in 2019, that was essentially what we were saying is, look, like not just us, but essentially every student maker that I've ever worked with is used to working on such a shoestring budget and is used to working with such frugal materials. We've all been skip diving. We've all emptied the charity shops across St Andrews, and so yeah, I think not. It doesn't just, the point I think I'm making there is it doesn't just equip us. I think it equips all students. Sustainability in the environment is a really big issue especially for young people. And what's great is this experience equips all students and all young creatives with the kind of skills that they need, even if they don't know it, kind of subconsciously, almost in like a Jason Bourne kind of way, just waiting for it to get activated. It equips them with the skills that they need to kind of be able to deliver on that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So to return a little bit to your time as Baron manager and your experience with that, do you think that entirely student-led, student-run theaters are a good thing? And if so, why or why not? What are the limitations?
I'm really sorry. I don't know if I can't play devil's advocate on this because I really strongly believe they are. I think an entirely student-run theatre is a really important thing. In my time as Baron manager, it was a known fact that the Baron was a completely student-run, or is still a completely student-run theatre. That was a known fact. It's one of only 3, I believe, completely student-run theatres in the UK, and I think I can't remember, but I wrote it down and it was in a briefing pack at one point. I think I'm going to say Nottingham and Warwick. Oh no, Edinburgh maybe. You know what? Yeah, some of those, a few of those.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's really exciting because it means that there is a kind of a similar mindset, that there's a collection of people who know that they want to do the same thing. The purpose of a student theatre isn't to make money. It's not to, and you know, the purpose of a lot of theatres isn't to make money, but even less so than say like the young Vic, which is obviously set up as a charity, and a lot of big theatres, producing theatres, are set up as charities, but they still have a break even. They still need to pay. They still have staff to pay. They still have lights to keep on, etc., etc., etc. The Baron, you know, the cost of running the Baron wasn't really taken by the students because like the electrical bills were paid by the students' union. So I suppose in a way it was in that sense taken by the students because that is run by the students. Point being, the barrier to entry is essentially so much lower, and it just creates an atmosphere of experimentation, of sharing, of excitement, and of peer support, basically, of other people who are in a similar position, wanting to do a similar thing, being really excited about making art. And I think that we need to be aware that they also, as well as everything else, as well as all the stuff I was saying about the creativity, they also, I think, and I tried really hard to make this, I think they create a really safe space, a really welcoming space, and a space where people can come and have a good time and try different things and learn different things and make friends. And I know that sounds a bit naff, but I think it's really important, and I think that we really can't downplay it, because also that's how new people get into the art form. Having said what I just said, it's worth noting that, like, as well as that, whilst 80% don't want to go into the professional world, at least a proportion of the 20% that might didn't think about doing it before they came to university, and they've only discovered it since they've come. And the reason they've been able to do that is, again, because there is a student-led theatre that's welcoming, it's engaging, that invites them to be a part of it, and yeah, encourages them to try something new.
Yeah, student theaters are a really interesting potential site of change because they sort of happen outside of like capitalist rules of needing to make money and the
I
as an
think that's
artist.
completely true. And actually, I think that's something that was really hard for me moving into the professional, and inverted commas, but moving into the professional world, is basically that realization that, like, actually that's completely unique, that student theatres, that the way that money is really not an object in student theatre. As long as you've got your 100 quid to, like, as I was saying before, cobble together something for set and props and costume, as long as you've got that, you know, you're not worrying about, everyone's a volunteer, everyone's there to have a good time, you're not worrying about paying people. Is that a problem? Maybe, I don't know, that's a whole nother discussion, I think. But yeah, by basically stepping outside of that kind of outside of the capitalist system, we don't, you know, we're not trading our art, we're not trading our labor and therefore our art for money. We're just able to make in a way that is conducive to making, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's transition the conversation a little bit to what you're doing now. Could you just tell our listeners, what's the Greenhouse Project?
Great question. So yeah, the Greenhouse is the UK's first, as I mentioned before, the UK's first zero waste theatre. So we basically build and operate a pop-up venue that's made completely from found and recycled materials. So all the materials that we use to build the venue and to run the venue, they either had a life, they had a life before. So they have been used for something, or they were surplus to requirements. So, like, for example, like, if we're using wood from a building site, the building site has ordered too much wood, we might take that from them, you know, it saves it going to landfill or being turned into chipboard. And then, as well as that, once we've finished using all the materials that we use, they have a life beyond us. Be that, so the vast majority of the wood that we used to build the greenhouse in 2019, for example, was donated to a charity called Move On Wood Recycling in Edinburgh, and they, I don't know if you have heard of them, but they use, like, waste wood from, like, construction sites and venues as well, to teach young at-risk kids woodworking skills and, like, give them skills that they need to kind of get into employment. Yeah, which is really, really great charity, really great people over there. So yeah, that's kind of the premise of what we do. The kind of actual, like the work that we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve, the mission statement, is we basically use the power, the art of theatre and storytelling to inspire action, to inspire climate action amongst young people, to help young people see the impact that their individual actions can have on the climate crisis. And then alongside that, we run a series of workshops and outreach programs, so working with audience members and young artists as well, giving them the skills that they need, the sustainability skills that they need to live and to work in a greener way. The project is aimed at people aged between 16 and 25. The reason for that is that age group is statistically cares the most about climate change, but is also the age group that is least likely to take an individual action to affect that. That sounds like a crazy statistic, and it sounds untrue. But what it actually means is, obviously young people around the world are protesting, and that's really fantastic. But 16 to 25-year-olds are the least likely to go out and buy an eco-friendly dishwasher. They're the least likely to turn off lights when they leave a room. They're the least likely to look for eco-friendly alternatives when they're buying something new. There are a few reasons for that. It is worth considering that often those people in those age brackets don't have purchase power. It's the parents that might be doing purchases, so that's valid. The other reason is the other, and what we posit to be the most significant reason, is young people feel, and there's plenty of evidence. I can send you some of the studies and stuff that we use to back this up if you want afterwards. You can, I don't know, link it in the description. But yeah, young people feel like their individual actions won't have an impact on the climate crisis, and that's completely understandable. Timothy Morton, who's an academic from Rice University in the USA, can't remember where in the USA, but definitely somewhere Texas. In the USA. Sure. He created this theory of hyperobjects. Basically, that idea is that there are some things that are so big, that are so challenging and so threatening, that it's impossible for any human to completely understand them from a factual perspective. And what that means is that we dissociate from them, and it's very easy to either say, I can't do anything about this, so I'm not going to do anything about this, or pretend that it doesn't exist. And it's really interesting when you apply that to climate change. The theory was actually developed in relation to climate change, and when you apply that to climate change, you can see quite clearly those dichotomies in the way that people think about it. But he also posits that art is a really effective way to kind of get over that gap. So rather than forcing people to engage with these ideas on a factual level, we invite them to engage with them on an emotional level, in a personal way. We create a really welcoming, intimate space that sparks discussion, that encourages people to share and to expose themselves to new ideas. So hopefully they realize that whilst not taking one flight to New York might save a couple of tons of carbon dioxide, if we all reduce the amount that we were flying by half, we would cut the world's global carbon emissions by 1% annually. So, those small changes really, really do add up, and that's hopefully that's what we're setting out to show young people, to empower them and to inspire them to make those changes through what we love doing, which is making art and pissing about and not doing anything hugely important.
It's a stressful time to be asking this question, but where do you see Greenhouse Theatre project going in the future?
I've been working very hard over the last few months. Obviously, we haven't been able to open, but I've been working really hard on organizational development work and setting up plans for the future. This is kind of what I began this discussion by saying, is I've been doing a lot of that recently, and it's really important, and I do really love it. I think being an artistic director, you have to love the business work as well as the creative work, or you should just be a director. So I do really love the business side. We've been working on a business plan, on new financial models. We've gone through, I think, 3 in the last 4 months, financial models, because just trying to make it work. We have no idea. We're I think we've struck on something that's quite interesting and good for the moment. So the reason I say this is we've got a 10-year strategy taking us up, obviously, till 2030. To be brief, the thing that we know for sure is that we're going to be in Bedford, which is a town just an hour's train ride north of London. And that will run from October 2021 to January 2022. We'll be doing we'll be presenting about 5 shows, and a series of workshops and education events and some outreach work. We're still confirming, but we are hoping to work in London in June 2021 as well. And we'll hopefully be working with the Canary Wharf estates to deliver that, but that's still kind of in the pipeline. Haven't quite confirmed that yet. And the idea of moving to Bedford is we're exploring opening the venue for longer, basically. So in the past, when it was open in 2019, it was open for a month, and we want to try and open it for basically semi-permanent status. So we want to open it. We're opening for 4 months then. We're hoping maybe to open it for 6 months in the year after that. And we basically want to keep doing that for 3 or 4 years. And then we want to transition to a more on the permanent side of semi-permanent. So looking at residencies that last a number of years, 2 or 3 years, hopefully. And by 2030, the goal, fingers crossed, is that we'll have a permanent home. And the greenhouse will be, delivering hopefully really groundbreaking, really exciting work. Encouraging theatre makers to think more sustainably, but also just encouraging everyone to think more sustainably. It's really important to us when we when that permanent home is, when we find that permanent home, we're never going to stop being a touring theatre. It's something that I think is really important. Geographical accessibility to the arts is really, really macabre, to be frank, in the UK.
Yes.
So I think we will always be working in exciting and different locations, and like working on tours and that kind of thing. Is there anything else about the long term that's paying lots of salaries, that would be great. That would be lovely. Yeah, and I think, to be honest with you, it's at the end of the day, that's the plan, and it all just comes down to the finance. As I say, we've got a new financial model that hopefully sees us bringing in some different revenue streams, working on some consultancy, some donations, that kind of thing, and and then obviously grants as well. And basically, we just need to make sure that we can get the funding in. And if we can, and if things keep going our way and we manage to create a sustainable model, then hopefully we'll be able to hit those goals. If you don't mind me saying quickly, I just remembered that actually the Greenhouse is about to launch our friendship scheme. There's a young person membership for £20 a year, and that gives you discounts and early access to our shows, early access to a number of different events and show tickets and that kind of thing. So if you like the work that we're doing, £20 isn't a lot, and it gives you a lot of great discounts. So there'll be links on our social media. Where can listeners sign up for that? Okay. So there'll be links on our social media, and the sign up page is on our website. And if you've got any questions, you can email info@thegreenhousetheatre.com, and we'll be more than happy to help. It's not just for 16 to 25-year-olds, though. There are a number of different friendship schemes and friendship levels for people who are kind of older. If anyone else wants to get involved as well, we'd really, really love any support at all is hugely appreciated. And there are some exciting rewards. Go check them out. I hope that they're very much worth it. So yeah, help us reach our 2030 dream is the thing I love.
Perfect. I'm sure a lot of people hearing this conversation and people who this is the first time encountering your work will get really excited about that.
I really hope so.
I know that I am, and I know the St. Andrews community is so rooting for you. So. All right, that's the show this week. Thank you so much for listening. This podcast is edited and produced by Jessica Undy-Jamison. Special thanks to Oli Savage for joining us today. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.